Welcome to Jack's Reviews, the channel where I go through the best and worst horror movies so you don't have to. I'm Sam Jackson. Today we're going through the best movie, Jason X. I'm sorry to people who dislike this movie, but it's great. It has everything that you want in a Friday movie. There's violence, there's gore, there's some awesome kills, there's some self-aware humour, there's some fun characters, there's some pretty cool throwbacks. You have Jason not being a weird slug monster. The movie was kind of openly made just because Freddy vs. Jason was still in limbo, so they decided to go for the Hellraiser Bloodlines route and send Jason in space, which, to be fair, at least it's memorable, something which way too many of the sequels are not. This is also the last time that Hodder would play Jason before the 2017 video game because fuck you, Ronnie you, and the film also ends the continuity of the original franchise. Now, I know depending on who you ask, these three New Line films don't count in the original timeline, but since they reference a lot of the events from previous films, I think they do. And to some extent, they do seem to follow them. It's almost like we're missing a movie between Part 8 and Jason Goes to Hell, and to me, that's all you're really missing. But with all that out of the way, let's review Jason X. The movie begins with Jason captured in a military facility. We meet the final girl, Rowan, who wants to get Jason killed because he's dangerous as fuck, but is basically told to shut up by this douchey scientist guy. Guess what? He figures out Jason's dangerous. A little interesting action sequence happens and Jason kills all the guards and the scientists, apparently. Rowan runs into a cryo room, she shoots Jason with a shotgun until he falls in the cryotube, where she tries to freeze him. But Jason doesn't like to sleep alone, so he cuts through the tube, stabbing Rowan and causing the whole room to freeze because why the fuck not? This is now a sci-fi movie. We're now like 400 or 500 years in the future. We see a bunch of characters who are obviously going to be this film's victims. We first meet the cyborg KM, the Professor Lau, and his three students. He's called Aaron, let's just go with Aaron, fuck his name. Janessa and Azrael. They're on some kind of random excavation thing, and they end up finding both Jason and Rowan by complete coincidence. After some funny dialogue about hockey masks.
What's a hockey mask?
Facial armor, used in a sport outlawed in 2024.
Azrael's arm is sliced off, which is when we get to see some of the future tech in this movie. The group take the two bodies onto their shuttle where we meet tons of victim characters, and I mean tons. The only ones that are actually notable are Sergeant Bronsky, Waylander, and Adrian. Everyone else really does not matter. We get the usual character development stuff, with the professors like Boss wanting Jason's body for study and money or some shit, but we also get to see some cool sci-fi stuff with the nanobots who save Rowan and fix Azrael's arm. During the autopsy of Jason we get to see his new face briefly, but there's some weird kinky sex stuff happening and Jason wakes up apparently and he is not happy. We then get the most badass kill in the whole franchise. Jason grabs Adrian by the head and shoves it into a tank of liquid nitrogen. Then he smashes a head on the side of the fucking thing. Oh god, it's so badass. Even Mythbusters covered this, that's how cool this shit is. Jason gets a new future machete to replace his old one, and he goes on a hunt. The other characters find Adrian, and Rowan tells him it's Jason, which causes the soldiers to be like, oh damn, maybe we should actually do our jobs. Jason kills a random victim, for whatever reason causes the professor to lose command and Brodsky takes over. Brodsky and his group then hunt down Jason, but Jason wants to get in a couple of kills first. He kills Azrael with a pretty awesome back crack, and then this soldier guy by smashing his head into a wall multiple times. But the worst part here, which no one seems to acknowledge, is Jason interrupts their video game. That's not called for Jason. He tries to kill the station's tech, but he's saved by Brodsky and a couple of soldiers, and then we get the usual slasher affair. The soldiers are killed off really quickly, we get a pretty boring neck crack, a really cool fight which ends up with the funniest kill in the entire series, with easily the best quip.
What's his condition?
He's screwed.
Another soldier is slashed and the next is cut in half. Then the last one is found impaled in some kind of equipment which is pointy. Fuck if I know, it's the future or something. Brodsky is then apparently killed when Jason stabs him twice, but spoiler alert.
It's gonna take more than a poke in the ribs to put down this old dog.
The survivors decide to get to this huge space station docking thing in order to escape, but Jason already has way too many people left to kill, so he takes out the pilot. This causes the Grendel to smash into this massive space station and destroys the whole thing, killing everyone on board, so well done Jason for that massive bit of collateral, and it leaves our survivors completely stranded. The group is about to come up with a new plan when Jason suddenly appears and they all run away, except the professor. He foolishly tries to make a deal with Jason who's killed off screen fucking fool, don't make a deal with an undead zombie. The group then get to work and decide to stock up on weapons and head to the escape pod. We get some weird human-robot makeout scene and we find out that Brodsky's still alive. The tech guy is then killed after finding like the mutilated remains of the pilot and seeing the professor's head, and Jason gives his old smash into the electric box death. Classic. One of the random students who had very little character development is then killed. She has a weird breakdown and ends up destroying the pod and killing herself, and then Jason shows up to finish off the last survivors, and then out of fucking nowhere, an upgraded kink sex bot version of KM she just beats the fuck out of Jason. She boots him a few times, shoots him over and over and over again. Like, it ends up with her blasting his body apart and eventually destroying his head. Like, fucking awesome. The group finally finds out that help is arriving, but one thing that KM did not take into account when she blasted Jason to shit was that she knocked him into the infirmary. So, those nanobots from earlier, they start repairing him. And since all his body parts are gone, they use metal. That is when we get Uber Jason. He's the most powerful Jason to date, and it's shown very quickly by him punching a fucking robot's head off. How much cooler can you get in this really bizarre film? The group run for it, and then Waylander is wounded for reasons, I guess, and he sacrificed himself by blowing up the ship. The group takes like a moment to collect themselves when Jason once again appears and rips a hole in the ship's hull. It causes a vacuum which sucks Janessa into little bits and pieces, and then we're down to the final 4. Or 3.5. They run into the meet-up point with a rescue ship, and the group splits up. Brodsky does a small spacewalk in order to fix the power failure in order for the rescue ship to be able to dock, whilst Rowan, Aaron and KM do what they can to slow down Jason. They use Rowan's knowledge on Jason to turn on the VR machine that was seen earlier in the film, and they create a fake Camp Crystal Lake with 2 topless teens. This kind of keeps Jason distracted, and he does a nice little homage to the sleeping bag kill, except this time it's a double sleeping bag kill. Everyone but Brodsky is then able to escape, and he has a one-on-one showdown with Jason as the ship explodes, allowing the others to escape. But because it's a stereotype, Jason comes back for one last scare, but this time, there's actually someone to save them. Brodsky suddenly appears out of nowhere like a fucking badass, and he drags Jason down to Earth. He even punched him in the head multiple times as the two of them burn up to like ashes on the Earth's atmosphere, or should I say second Earth. Space!
Space!
We get a sweet moment with the 3 survivors where KM and Aaron are definitely going to be fighting for some kind of weird robo-human relationships whilst Rowan's stood there awkwardly smiling. And the film basically ends when we see a shooting star crash landing indicating Jason has landed and 2 teens go out to investigate. And that's it, Jason X is officially finished, and even though the ending's a little bit debatable for the part where he lands, I honestly think Jason's dead. Like, even though half of him's made out of metal, half of him's still like natural, and all that is going to be disintegrated, and even some of the metal is going to be like burnt up and destroyed. And since nothing in the film series, ignoring the comic series, follows this, Jason's basically dead, and this is the last like canonical film in the franchise, so he's gone. Deal with it. And with that out of the way, I fucking love this movie. I mean, it's absolutely stupid, and I do get why people don't like it. Like, it is very understandable to me why people don't like it. I mean, it's the same reason why some people don't like some of the like Freddy sequels, because they have gone massively into self-parody, but at least they're parodying themselves instead of just going so stereotypical and so boring that they've just become a shadow of them former selves. Jason X as well, when it comes to its production value, is quite good, especially for such a cheap, like, low-budget movie. I mean, I get this is like the highest costing one in the franchise out of the original 10, at around about 14 million if I remember correctly. But even with just that much money, it's not much when you're using so much sci-fi and CGI elements. And I think, to some extent, a lot of it works. I mean, obviously there's a really bad VR scene where that weird monster's cut in half or some shit, but I think it's meant to be bad. That's what's funny about it. It's tongue-in-cheek, it's cheesy as fuck. Then when you get to the actual kills, they're gory, they're violent, they're interesting to watch, and I think it's great. I also have to massively praise the writing. Jesus Christ, the writing in this. It's the funniest one in the franchise by far. And I really like Part 6 for its humour, but this one just outdoes it, just because it's so sarcastic, and it kind of reminds me a lot of like the sarcastic British humour that a lot of modern day comedians use, and obviously as a Brit, I'm very good with this. The acting overall is also pretty okay. I mean, it's not going to be great with a 10th entry in a series, but at least it's better than I was expecting. And the actual characters themselves are all fun and interesting. Even the victims are quite funny and interesting to watch. A good example of this is Janessa, who is just great throughout the whole movie, just with so much sarcasm, wit, and just being a little bit of a cheeky bitch, to be fair, and that's a character who I relate to, so kudos to whoever wrote like Janessa, because she's badass as hell. The music is also great throughout. There's some really awesome orchestral soundtrack throughout it, and I normally don't mention this for Friday movies, but The soundtrack for this one's pretty damn good, since it mixes kind of like the old Friday music with like some cool like techno futuristic stuff, and I like that a lot. The fun fact is this was the longest time between Friday movies, being a whole 8 years. The only reason why that's now been beaten is because the last movie came out in 2009, and even though we were meant to get one last year and the year before that, the Rings movie really fucked that up. Jason X is also the only movie in the UK to not receive an 18 rating in the whole Friday franchise. Instead of R, we have 15 and 18, and this one's a 15, which means it's not as violent apparently. Continuing the theme of my badass country during this review, for whatever reason, it seems to be quite noted that critics in the UK seem to quite enjoy this movie, whilst critics in the US seem to dislike it. As I mentioned just a few minutes ago, it may just be due to the fact that this movie has a lot of British humour and a lot of sarcasm and a lot of the weird quips they'd expect from much more British comedy than an American, and that kind of just may be a cultural thing, and apparently I think the writer was actually British as well, which would explain some of this stuff. Or if he was American, he was highly influenced by like British comedy. And I think there is a strong difference between it, and it may have affected Americans' reaction to this movie compared to the Brits. As mentioned earlier, this is the last movie to star Kane Hodder as Jason, as the director of Freddy vs. Jason decided that Kane Hodder wasn't the correct fit and basically broke his heart. Fuck you, Ronnie, you. But at least we get the worst Jason actor in the entire franchise for the next film, so that was obviously a great choice in the long run. For the 2017 video game, if you're able to do all the cool little puzzles in the virtual cabin, you will eventually be able to go on to a small version of the Grendel map, which is currently in development by Ilphonics and Gun Media, and you get to see a pretty awesome, just kind of small cutscene in first person, may I also add, which is the first for the game, where Jason just like impales you with his like future machete, and it's the Uber Jason as well, so I think that's pretty damn awesome. But overall, did I actually enjoy this movie? Hell to the yes. Jason X is like one of my favourite movies. Obviously it copies off like the Scream formula that was in during like the mid-90s with stuff like Bride of Chucky and all that kind of stuff. But with Jason X, it just seemed a lot more organic. Like, the writers knew it was parodying, so they went 110% in, and to me, that's a great thing. I know to a lot of people that comedy in the Friday films wasn't a good thing, because I know even though Part 6 is very well loved by the majority of the fans, a lot of them also dislike it because of its very humorous tone. And as I even mentioned in that review, the part where it's a smiley face on the tree, I find it fucking great, but I know a lot of people don't, and that kind of humour is pretty much what this entire film is. Once again, I do understand why a lot of people don't like it, but for me, this is the perfect Friday movie in almost every aspect. Because of the fact it basically takes the piss out of itself, it allows it to expand on the stuff it can take the piss out of itself for, such as the double sleeping bag kill, and it's great. I mean, obviously it's terrible, but it's the kind of terrible that's great, but it's actually fun and enjoyable, instead of the terrible but fun, but it's not overly enjoyable that Jason Goes to Hell was. But anyway, thank you very much for watching my review of Jason X. And next week I will be going back to my 2-video schedule, and then after that, we're done. The Friday franchise will officially be finished next Saturday, and I'm kind of looking forward to finishing it. The week after that, I'm just going to have a couple of special stuff. I'm going to have a ranking video where I'm going through all 12 Friday movies and ranking them from worst to best. And I'm also planning on possibly doing some possible podcasty stuff where I talk about like sequels, prequels, and all that kind of stuff. And I'll also be telling people what's coming next for reviews. But anyway, with all that out of the way, thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy this, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you all for the next video. Goodbye.